on Goblin Reddit. Today's story is...
My sister thought she could manipulate me like always, but 3 minutes of video changed our lives forever, and now she is on the run. My older sister, Carla, has always been an expert at manipulating situations. From a young age, she mastered the art of playing the victim and convincing our parents of any lie. It didn't matter if she caused conflicts, damaged valuables, or made up absurd stories. Her ability to cry on demand and create convincing narratives worked unfailingly on our parents, who invariably took her side. I learned early on that confronting her was useless. Evidence or logic never mattered in the face of her obstinacy and my parents' permissiveness. This pattern became predictable. She got her way, evaded responsibility, and when she was caught lying, she made such a fuss that everyone ended up giving in. For this very reason, I distanced myself in my adulthood. Unlike Carla, I sought independence as soon as I turned 18, got a full-time job after graduating, and paid for my own place, moving away from all that family dynamic. She, on the other hand, accumulated job failures, acquired debts, and destroyed relationships. Metaphorically speaking, she hasn't burned any real bridges. My parents contributed significantly to her behavior by constantly rescuing her, covering up her mistakes and inventing justifications. They always found miraculous explanations for her disasters, as if they had written an excuse Bible exclusively for her. Last month, I received a desperate call from my parents. Carla had lost yet another job and faced imminent eviction. I questioned them as to why they were contacting me, considering that their house has plenty of room. Their response was another excuse taken from the Book of Justifications, followed by the suggestion that I should put her up. I ironically wondered if that book also mentioned women of dubious reputation like the original. I refused immediately. I could see how it would end. She would trash my apartment, ignore my rules, and treat me like her personal servant. My parents insisted, but I stood my ground, regardless of the circumstances or their protests. When my parents failed to convince her, Carla decided to present her case in person. Bad strategy. If my parents failed to convince me, she had even less chance. Her voice alone irritates me deeply. When she called looking for accommodation, I hung up on her immediately, clearly saying that there was no space available. Naturally, she didn't accept this answer, so I pretended to go into a tunnel and hung up. An obviously false excuse, considering that the nearest tunnel is 500 kilometers away. However, she showed up at my door unexpectedly. I don't know how he got my address, although I guess my parents gave it to him. Thinking it might be a friend to play video games with, I opened the door without thinking. When I saw him, I mentioned that I was going out and closed the door quickly, pretending that the fumigators were coming. He obviously didn't believe a word, but he understood my refusal. He gave me a cold look, warning me that I would regret it. A few days later, I arrived home, exhausted from work, longing for a rest. Instead, I found a disconcerting situation. Carla had broken in and was sitting on my sofa, trembling and crying. As soon as I entered, she shouted at me to go away. Before I could ask how she had got in, she accused me of spying on her while she was showering, sobbing that she had seen me looking at her through the bathroom door. Without giving me time to process her words, she called our parents in front of me. She dramatically acted out being terrified, barely able to speak through her sobs. She told them that I had allowed her to stay, but only to harass her. She had even brought clothes scattered around the room as evidence. I heard my parents screaming at me on the phone, calling me depraved. My mother cried, saying she would never speak to me again. It was absurd. I wasn't even in the apartment when it supposedly happened, but Carla had already planted the seed in their minds. Then I remembered the security cameras installed months ago after package thefts in the building. Carla had overlooked a crucial detail. Her accusation was physically impossible. I requested access to the recordings, which clearly showed everything. Carla entering with a set of keys, staying alone for 2 hours, while I appeared leaving 5 hours before her arrival. The cameras also captured her sticking her head around the door to check if I had arrived, clearly setting her trap. I immediately sent these recordings to my parents. Their account had more inconsistencies. She claimed to have been terrified for 15 minutes, but the camera showed that only 2 minutes had passed between her entry and the call, a fact confirmed by my parents' phone records. My priority now is to protect myself from any future attempts to ruin my reputation. I filed a police report, securing copies of the calls and security footage. This would allow more people to learn the truth if necessary. Editing. Many people ask why Carla ignored the cameras. Simple. She had never visited my apartment before, and the devices are strategically placed to be discreet. both for security and aesthetics. She probably didn't notice them when she came in. As for the keys, I don't know where she got them. When I asked her before she left, she refused to answer. I warned her that I would call the police immediately if she didn't explain how she had gained unauthorized entry. She finally handed over a complete set, although I don't know how she got them. My parents don't have copies, so they didn't come from them. Fortunately, I recovered them, preventing her from later claiming that I provided them to justify her accusation. Update 1. After I reported my sister for trespassing, I expected her to leave me alone, but apparently no one informed her about the formal complaint because she decided to escalate the situation. The next morning, I received an urgent message from my landlord. It turns out that Carla had filed a formal complaint accusing me of harassment in my own apartment. She obviously calculated that this lie would result in my eviction as revenge, or even allow her to stay temporarily. She clearly didn't think her strategy through. On hearing the landlord's explanation, I didn't even bother to argue. I simply shared the security footage, explained in detail what had happened the previous night, and showed him a copy of my police report. The evidence spoke for itself. After reviewing the video, he not only backed up my version, but was completely outraged by it. Carla no longer limited her lies to the family environment in order to get accommodation or take revenge for my refusal. Now she involved third parties who could react severely to such accusations. And indeed they did, until the video evidence clarified the situation. I contacted her, informing her about my complaint for trespassing, expecting another tantrum, but her reaction was worse. She went into complete panic, obsessively repeating that involving the police was excessive and that, quote, this was a family matter. Perhaps she was right until the call from the landlord, but now there was no possible justification, considering that she herself had escalated the conflict by involving others. Predictably, she called our parents claiming that the police report was disproportionate. I received multiple calls that I ignored and several messages. Most revealingly, they weren't angry with Carla, they were angry with me. They shared her logic. Supposedly nothing serious had happened because she had only lied to us. When I mentioned the landlord to them, something they apparently didn't know about, or were pretending not to know, they replied, but it's already been resolved without serious consequences. They argued that if the police proceeded with the complaint, she risked imprisonment. For my parents, the consequences of our actions were completely disproportionate. The reality is that the consequences were different only because I had video evidence. Without that protection, they would probably be reporting me and my sister themselves. My response was blunt and direct, without contemplating talking to my parents. He accused me of being a sexual deviant interested in my own sister. The only reason this didn't escalate catastrophically is because Carla is so incredibly stupid. With better planning, I would be in prison right now, long before her. Be grateful she still has a few hours of freedom. You could use them to escape to Canada instead of arguing with me. If I haven't made myself clear, this conversation is pointless. I will not withdraw the complaint. Then I hung up and returned to the police station to check on the progress of the case. All they told me was that they were still analyzing the recordings. Ironically, this procedural slowness probably wouldn't exist if I were the one accused of depraved or incestuous behavior or any other aberration my sister could invent. Update 2. It took them more than 48 hours to process my complaint and take action, but they finally arrested Carla, who remains in custody as I write this. They found her hiding at my parents' house, the first place they investigated after issuing the arrest warrant, as per my suggestion when I made the complaint. The only benefit of this delay is its timing. Being Friday afternoon, the same slowness they showed in reviewing a simple recording will affect the judicial process. No judge will hear cases this late, so Carla will remain in custody until Monday when they will determine whether bail is appropriate. In addition, my parents will have to pay it, since she obviously lacks resources. According to my research, bail could be as high as $50,000, although it varies depending on the severity of the case. We'll know for sure on Monday when the judge decides whether to release her on bail. Part of me hopes they won't grant it, keeping her incarcerated until the trial. I doubt she'll try anything against me now, knowing that any provocation would result in more charges. However, my compassionate side recognizes that I have secured her housing with food and private surveillance. With some restrictions, of course, evening walks probably prohibited, and any insistence possibly met with police force, but definitely cheaper than renting. The real damage will be to my parents if they try to get her private legal representation. Better to leave her with an assigned public defender. I understand that these are specialists in getting extended stays for people like Carla. Addition. Today, Tuesday, my parents paid the $5,000 bail to release Carla. However, in assuming this expense, they opted to accept a public defender instead of hiring a private lawyer, as they were financially unable to cover both expenses. She preferred to leave immediately accepting public representation instead of remaining in detention for more days. A risky bet even by Las Vegas standards. If the public defender turns out to be mediocre, as is often the case, she will probably end up serving more time in prison anyway. Update 3. The trial against my sister was supposed to start a week ago, but judging her slim chances, she decided to abscond. I recognize that escaping was statistically her best option considering her chances in court, although this decision will only make her situation worse. Eventually, she will have to face justice for the break-in. Her escape cannot be indefinite. Regarding the apartment, I have verified that recovering her keys was useless, as the recordings show that she entered with another set. The origin of these copies remains a mystery, information that I hope to discover during the trial. Without this process, it will remain unknown. I trust that they will eventually locate it, and we will get answers. I find it impossible to imagine my sister surviving in the wild, hunting and evading the authorities. In a matter of days, she would probably be found starving, dehydrated, and begging for imprisonment just to receive food. My parents definitively lost the bail due to her failure to appear in court. Frankly, her escape seems absurd to me considering that she was only facing charges for trespassing. He did not commit physical assault or theft, he only made false accusations, which I will address later. He would probably have received a minimum sentence, possibly weeks in prison. With a lenient judge, maybe just community service and a criminal record. His escape guarantees harsher penalties when he is caught. Although I doubt he will receive years in prison, losing the bail was completely irrational. He should have faced the consequences responsibly. Regarding her false accusations, although technically she did not file a formal complaint, I was hoping to use the guilty verdict as grounds for my defamation lawsuit. I was planning to file it after her sentencing, but now I'll have to wait, and I especially hate waiting. If she is lucky, or the authorities prioritize other cases, it could be months until her capture and retrial. For now, I console myself by imagining her running through forests, fleeing from bears like a cartoon character, desperately screaming for food. Until there are new developments regarding my sister, I will not have any additional updates. I will say goodbye for now. Update 4. I have lots of news about my sister, her trial, my lawsuit, and all the recent events. First, how and when they located her. I anticipated a week, but they surprised me. They found her in another city trying to survive by unusual methods. Not hunting or hiding in forests, but something even more far-fetched. Perhaps you know those YouTube challenges, where people try to survive for several days starting with a penny. That's exactly what she was trying to do when she ran out of resources, buying cheap products in supermarkets to resell them on beaches. The problem, she lacked popularity, audiovisual equipment, and reality works differently. Worse still, her suspicious behavior caused someone to alert the police, facilitating her identification and subsequent transfer for trial. Without this intervention, she would still be on the run. Honestly, I doubt she would have survived much longer on her own. After her capture, the trial proceeded quickly. Due to the conclusive video evidence, it was impossible to refute such proof. During the sentencing, the magistrate explained that normally this type of break-in would receive 1 month's imprisonment with community service. However, her escape justified tripling the prison sentence and doubling the community service hours. I finally discovered the origin of the keys. A building employee had provided them to her under unknown circumstances. The residents voted unanimously to fire her, and now she faces a criminal record for complicity. My parents didn't even attend the trial. Apparently losing $5,000 in bail was enough for them to declare, that's it. It's good that they are finally starting to disassociate themselves, allowing her to face the consequences. Maybe that way, she will finally mature. Some people mature academically, others in prison, some never. Place your bets on my sister's future. Interesting fact. Once her trial for trespassing was over, I filed my lawsuit. A week after hearing the verdict, we formalized the legal action. I did not demand significant compensation, since her defamation only affected my parents, landlord, and some friends. Fortunately, her lies did not spread far enough to devastate my reputation, although it could potentially have happened. My lawsuit was intended to demonstrate to her the seriousness of making false accusations on a whim. The implicit message was clear. You are imprisoned. Here is my lawsuit as a reminder. You tried to destroy me for refusing to do your bidding. Now face the consequences. If you plan future revenge, remember that I can sue you again. Enjoy your confinement. Obviously, this was not word for word, but it was my personal interpretation. Partial understanding of the message will suffice. Specifically, don't provoke me, because unlike our parents, I will not tolerate your manipulations. My lawsuit concluded shortly after her release from prison. I obtained something more than monetary compensation. Her signature committing that any recidivism would allow me to sue her until she was sent back to prison. Realistically, the financial compensation would have been irrelevant, considering the minimal damages. This agreement surpasses any restraining order due to its practical effectiveness in future litigation. She currently resides in another town as a free citizen and not a fugitive, allowing her to obtain employment according to my research. I consider this optimal. Without occupation, she would probably spend her time planning new follies, some potentially involving me, so it is preferable to keep her busy with her own life. I bid you farewell for now, hoping that this update is conclusive. I have reported at length. I doubt that any further events will occur. Perhaps I am wrong, and we will meet again soon here. I sincerely hope that both my parents and my sister will keep me completely out of their lives. They constantly sabotage their own existences with absurd decisions, but I would greatly appreciate it if they did so without involving me. Addition: for those who ask how my parents ruined their lives, first, financially with the $5,000, a significant amount for them. Also through the negative publicity of the trial, being recognized in the community as the parents of the accused. Addition: apparently my sister underwent a radical transformation, but to do something completely absurd. Not against me, fortunately, but against our parents. She tried to sue them for negligent upbringing. She literally tried to hold them legally responsible for her current personality. I have mixed feelings about this. Parents have a crucial influence on a child's development, but there are limits. If I were a minor, it would be more valid. As an adult, I should be responsible for my current decisions. I will not defend my parents, they were terrible. Probably any stranger offering sweets would be a better parental influence. However, having reached adulthood, I must take responsibility regardless of previous parental damage. A true transformation would be demonstrated by building a better life, not by looking for external culprits. Suing our parents shows that we continue to attribute our problems to external factors, denying our capacity for self-determination. But we have complete control to decide to improve and transform ourselves positively. Predictably, her lawsuit failed. The judge dismissed it almost immediately, according to my information. At least now their dramas only involve them, keeping me completely out of it.